Hello everybody and welcome back to Combe Valley Campers. Today we are going to be fitting an Autoterm 2 kilowatt heater into my classic camper van Bulli. I just want to take a moment to say thank you to our sponsors, Howden's Modified Van Insurance. That's right, A-Plan are now Howden's. They still do exactly the same in that they will insure your van from the time you buy it until you completely convert it into a camper van and beyond. And if you want an exclusive rate on your next policy, please mention Combe Valley Campers and they will sort you out. Diesel heaters have now become commonplace in small, medium and large camper vans, and that's mainly due to the lower price point. We have in front of us here the Autoterm 2D 2 kilowatt heater. We fitted a ton of these in all sorts of vans. We're talking crafters, sprinters, Ducatos, a multitude of T5s, T6s, even T4s, things like that. But I've never fitted one to a classic van such as a T25. And what better van to do it to than my own van? As a bit of a spoiler, we have had a diesel heater fitted to this one before. I had a very, very old Eberspacher or Webasto heater that came out of a welfare van 15 years ago. I managed to get the thing cranked up and working and it lasted me a season. And it was so noisy that I actually got told off for increased noise levels after a curfew at a campsite. It was that old and that noisy, so yeah, it's a good thing that thing has gone. We now have this Autoterm heater in front of us, and I could explain everything that's in front of you right now, but what we're gonna do is go back in the past when I did an unboxing with me. So when it comes to ordering your Autoterm planar 2D, which is the 2 kilowatt, or the 4D, which is the 4 kilowatt heater, there's plenty of options available, loads of things you can add or not add to the package deal when you come to order it off the website. What I have in front of me is pretty much one of everything, and the actual heater as it turns up in the box. So I thought we'd do a little unboxing for you right now. Like I said before, this is the 2D, and we have fitted dozens of these in vans, mostly the likes of a T5, T6, and they are a fantastic option. Now, a lot of people will say, why are you not just fitting the Chinese diesel heaters? For all of the reasons, all right? We've fitted them before, we've repaired them before, and we've removed them before. And in all honesty, for what you get for your money for a diesel heater, that's great. Yes, they work 9 times out of 10, they're a really good kit, but a lot of people do spend the less amount of money on a Chinese diesel heater, then spend a lot of time researching how to repair it, buying new parts for it, etc., etc. Whereas we regard this as a plug and play or fit and forget kit. So removing the instruction manuals, you've got plenty of fastenings, fixings, plugs, exhaust brackets. Everything is sealed up in these nice bags. That is the bracket for the fuel pump. There's some fuel lines and some correct fuel line clamps, not just the Jubilee type screw clamps. So that's a fuel type clamp. That is a Jubilee style clamp. That is for attaching the exhaust onto the actual heater itself. The silencer with some excellent clamps in there. You see the clamps going on there. Again, sign of quality over the Chinese diesel heaters. The correct fuel line. Again, I don't mean to be shitting all over diesel heaters, but one of the main repairs we do is the fuel lines. They come with the cheap, green, inappropriate fuel line. This white, semi-flexible stuff is the right gear, and we've never had any problems with that. The main power loom. We have both the ground and the live fused. We don't often use this fuel cable, power cable, but it's a very comprehensive piece of kit. It's all got the protective conduit on it, and it comes with ring terminals to connect directly to your battery, so you don't even have to install it into your existing fuse board if you don't want to. And then that's the power plug that goes into the loom on the heater itself. The loom then for the controller. This is the 1.8 meter loom. which goes into one of the other controllers you have. But what normally is chosen on the drop-down boxes on the website is to add the 2.5 meter extension loom. And sorry, this says 7 meter extension loom. And what they used to do was have a loom that would plug in here and just extend it, whereas now you bin that loom completely and you've actually got a full 7 meter loom, which is excellent. Rather than having join and join and join, you've actually got the 1.8 or the 7. So again, everything's all conduited, which is beautiful. And last but not least, in terms of the wiring, is the fuel pump loom. And it comes with a plug to attach that. And point to note, when it comes to actually connecting this on the fuel pump, it doesn't matter which side you terminate those, the pump will still work. The silenced combustible air intake, which is excellent. Again, a lot of these heaters don't come with a little silencer, but in an effort to make these quieter, they put like a silencer on the fresh air intake or the combustible air intake, and then they have the silencer on the exhaust as well. And in an effort to keep it quieter, we have the very quiet fuel pump, which is a new addition in the last 6 to 12 months, the very, very quiet fuel pump. Moving on then, before we get the actual heater out itself, we have enough exhaust. Oh, do you know what? I'm gonna have to take the heater out next. There we go. So the actual heater itself, a very nice comprehensive unit, much like you see any other heater. Nicely packaged, feels quality, not cheap, shiny plastics or anything like that. Feels a quality piece of kit. And again, you've got your loom with the different plugs for either temperature sensors, the actual main wiring loom, fuel pump and power. And that's about it in terms of that. There are different ways to mount this, and there are different options on the website. You can have a turret type mounting plate, you can just have a flat mounting plate, or the other two types of plates that we're going to discuss in a minute as well. So again, very, very nice piece of kit. I'm running out of room. Moving on then, get this out of the way. 3 more items, and I'll pull them all out in one go. Get rid of this. So the silencer, stainless steel, and it's actually got the nice little trim cap on the end, and it's got a sliced section so it will fit over the exhaust port on your heater. Now generally what we do, we cut these in the appropriate place depending on the model of vehicle you're fitting it to, and then we insert the silencer in that area, and then you've got the clamps appropriate to fit them all together. The fuel standpipe, in our application that we're putting out on Bulli, we won't be using the standpipe, but if you have a vehicle with a pressurized fuel system, you will need to remove the tank and fit that standpipe into the tank itself. And last but not least, the insulative boot for the silencer. Again, depending on where you're fitting it into the vehicle or fitting the exhaust under the vehicle, you want to keep it as cool as possible. If it's close to any sensitive electrics or under trims, you know, the belly pans on your van, you want to keep that exhaust nice and insulated, and that just fits over there. This can be cut to length, or if you've only got a short section of pipe, then the silencer and then the tip, you can just cut this and fit it either way. Very, very nice gear. Going into the added extras, let's go for the mounting brackets. This one in particular, that is for a T5, T6. That is designed to fit the heater under the driver's seat. So that slots up into the chassis nicely. And if you've seen diesel heaters before or diesel heater fittings, that stainless steel laser cut plate will fit directly into the chassis, and then you just attach 2 fastenings through these screw holes. Our application, when we fit this to our Type 25, we're going to be fitting it underslung, but using this stainless steel laser cut box. And again, super nice. You can use these brackets if you need to mount them through any chassis rails, or you can use the numerous fixings in the metal plate to fasten it either through a chassis leg or, you know, into the floor of your vehicle. It's got the outlets here, and basically this allows you to mount your heater sideways under the vehicle. So the exhaust outlets, say if this was the outside of the vehicle, you fit this heater into here, and then the exhaust and fresh air outlets are leading out to the side of the vehicle. And then as you can see, you've got the opening both ends for your intakes and hot air outlets. And then there is a really nice blanking grommet there, which is where you'll feed all your cables through. But when it comes to it, we will be, well, there's two options. If you don't have any wiring grommets, you could just cut a hole in the center of that, drill a hole in the center of that, and that'll be perfectly suitable. But when it comes to it, we will be fitting a correct wiring grommet in there. And that is about it for those added extras. We also tick the box for the carbon monoxide alarm. And if I remember rightly, you can get these in two different colors, either the dark gray / black or the white. We don't really mind what color it is, so in this instance we've got the white, and that comes as part of a optional extra when you order the kit. A very important piece of kit if you don't have one. I know they come in lots of different formats, lots of different price points, but that is a good approved carbon monoxide detector for your heater, or for the Autoterm planar heater. Lastly is the two different types of controllers that are on offer. In fact, there are 3 different types on offer, but the third one is a Wi-Fi controller, Wi-Fi SIM card controller. So you can control your heater from anywhere, but it does need a SIM card. It's not just a remote control. The one we choose over anything really is the digital display, and we'll go into that later when it comes to fitting. But this is an excellent little display where you can see more of the controls. It will also show you voltage and the ambient temperature and the outlet temperature of the vehicle as well. So you'll have your leisure battery voltage on there too. So if you don't have a voltage reader for your existing leisure electrics setup, it will show it up on there. And that's about it. I think let's go back to the van and get this fitted. The aim of this video is not necessarily a how-to, but how we're going to be fitting this heater in this situation. There's plenty of how-tos out there, and if you are looking for a video on how to install your Autoterm on a VW T5, please head over to Urban Arc Overland YouTube channel. Urban Arc Overland, yes, got that right. Head over to his YouTube channel where he has just released what I would consider the best diesel heater installation video on a T5, T6. He goes through all the points, all the things you might be doing wrong. Let's hope I can do the same things, but because there's such a good video out there, this isn't going to necessarily be a how-to, but we're showing you how I would do it on the exterior of a van and a classic van, and how we'll plumb it in, etc., and do the wiring, because it's a totally different situation on a classic van. So without further ado, let me show you where we're going to be placing this heater underneath Bulli. What we've got to consider then is the size of the unit and how it's going to take up the space, and then how we're going to be feeding the pipes into here. This is our ideal interior for now, and in a previous video, and I can leave a link down in the description, or I can put it on a card up here, I went through all of this interior and where everything's sited. But as a quick recap, underneath the bed we have all the electrics. We have our Roma lithium-ion battery, we've got a Victron inverter and the MPPT controller and all that sort of stuff. All of this gear under here I want to move and chuck in this box here, because after a summer's worth of travelling in it, I realised that getting into this storage space is a lot easier than getting into this storage space. So I'm going to put all the electric components in here and items for camping that I don't use so often. Whereas the items that I would use more often from here, then going to chuck them in there. All right, so that's how I'm going to play it. And that is where I need to consider the heater placement as well. I want the heating ducts ideally to come out either down here or in the base of the bed. And in the tubing, I will make separate compartments so it doesn't affect any of the heating or anything like that. So heating duct out somewhere here on the side of the interior, and the electrics will be down here as well, and the heater underneath. Sounds a bit waffly, doesn't it? I know what it's like in my mind. I'm sure I do. But I think the next thing we'll do is head underneath and show you exactly where we're going to be placing this heater and where I placed the previous heater, which will help. So in the previous version of Bulli's interior, I had the diesel heater located in one of the cupboards. And if you look just here, you can see where I had the turret mount. Now, if you consider a turret mount, they are available in different depths from Autoterm. And again, I can leave either a picture, we can drop a picture in the video, so you can see where I had mounted the turret mount here I don't want the heater in there anymore, so I can utilize the space. So I'm going to be using the stainless steel box, as previously mentioned. And after a quick test fit, it fits right there beautifully. I'm extremely happy with that fitment, because although it looks deeper on this chassis member here, it's actually pretty much the same height, maybe 5 or 6 mil deeper than this chassis rail here. And so it won't ever bottom out. It's going to be protected by the from the elements, by the box. And it means I can also remove the interior box in there and just drill hole straight through the floor and nut and bolt it like I wanted to. So the actual location is going to be there. And you can see also where I've previously had the exhaust on the older Eberspacher or Webasto, whichever one it was, and I had the air inlet just located over there as well. So first things first, I think, is we're going to drop, well, first things first, I can remove all of this old stuff. I don't require that any longer. I'm going to get inside. I'm going to empty out the interior. Luckily, you can just lift it out, so that's great. I'm going to remove the interior just so we've got a bit more space and a bit more room to work, and it'll be clearer for you to see. So interestingly, and it's something I'd forgotten about, I can actually see in this floor, or on the floor of this unit here, where I was going to be placing the diesel heater. And it's as soon as I started drilling that hole, I realized I don't want the heater under here. It's just going to take up too much room. So I'm going to be routing the pipework through the hole that you see in the floor there. And then I'll probably do something like make a false floor or make some little trunking underneath. So when I do come to fit the electrics, nothing's going to be touching each other. Actually really happy with that. I'm going to remove this now, and then that will give me access through to the floor where I can plan my route effectively. So as you can see, this is where the previous heater was, and you can see traces of the old interior. And that's where our 2 pipes are going to come through. I might have to extend this hole a bit, but I'm hoping we might be able to get both 2 pipes through there. If not, we'll be routing them in different locations, not a big deal. I think underneath the floor, the heater sits about here, so we might be able to route the pipes. If not, we just drill another hole. Not a huge deal. In my infinite wisdom, oh, another note before I carry on, you'll notice all the electrics running around here. I've never been happy with that location, of them all being tightly packed around the interior, which is why I'm keen to get the electrics in this location so it doesn't run back here, etc, etc. But in my infinite wisdom, look what I've done. I completely forgot I'd done this, but I've already pre-wired a diesel heater. You'll see the lovely wiring from Rain Automotive that we get everything from. But yes, in anticipation, I've already got a live for the diesel heater, which is fused under the seat. So that's going to make our lives a little bit easier. And I've already got a lead hole as well, or a hole in the floor where a previous cable came through. So I think next stage is we're going to mount the box underneath, or mount the heater inside the box, and then mount the box to the bottom of the van. So the box comes complete with some mounting plates, fastenings, and also 2 sets of mounting holes. I haven't quite decided yet which ones I'm going to use, but it gives you a bit of versatility. And also, if I wanted to, I could actually chop that end off if I wanted to get it closer one way or another. So the plan is, mount this to the floor. I have the air inlet on one side. I can chop this in 2 if I want, or add an extension, and the heat outlet the other. And that will go through the previous hole, or we cut another hole in the floor. I'm actually going to be completely removing these brackets. I don't need these brackets. They're not going through a chassis rail. They're actually going to go through the floor. So I'm going to mark this up, drill the holes, and what I'm going to be using is these stainless steel countersunk Allen headed bolts, so they will sink into the wooden floor and be flush with the top of the floor surface. So without further ado, let's get it marked up, drilled, and provisionally mounted. So what I've done, as you've seen, is mounted the heater in there, mainly because I wanted to get this pipe on here, because that is the limit of our space. I would want to get this whole box as close to this wall as possible, so it's as close to that hole as possible. So I mounted the heater tube on there just provisionally, and I've just seen that I can mount this box all the way back as far as I can. I don't need to chop any brackets. This bracket is absolutely fine. It will go through the floor, and the heater hose is perfect because it can just come up through there and then just feed straight into that big hole we'd made before, and I can also utilize that as an entry point for the wiring as well. So super happy. I will then make another hole, maybe about here, as long as that lines up with the division of the interior, and I'll be able to feed that pipe directly up in here and directly out into the interior. So all in, pretty happy with that location. All I've got to do now is mark it and drill it. That is perfect. So it's got a bit of an air gap around there, down here, and round the back as well. Heater provisionally bolted in. I've not done the locking washers, or I've not done the nylock nuts or anything on there. And these hoses are pushed onto the ends of the heater purely for the next stage, which is making the holes through the floor to allow the heater inlet and outlet hoses go up there. Point to note, and this was made clear in the Urban Arc Overland video, do not Jubilee clamp these hoses onto the heater. They're designed to be a good fit, not a completely tight fit. And the reason they have said that is because if there's any strain put on the case, which through these hoses could happen, there is risk of the case hitting the internal fan. And once you've done that, then not necessarily game over, but it's not really healthy for the heater. So do make sure that the hoses are pushed on and in a position that they don't pull off, but do not clamp them entirely. So next stage then, I think I'm going to be putting the interior box back in, then lift the van back up and drill some appropriately sized holes for these heater tubes. I'm getting there. We've decided where we're going to put the holes. For the interior air, or the living compartment air to come back in to the heater, I'm going to just drill straight through the piece of wood that's over the hole that we had the previous heater in. It's going to be nice and easy. It's actually a really nice thing having that wood there, because I can make a second hole, and that's where we're going to put all the wiring through. We can grommet it, or we can just backfill it with some sort of mastic that won't set, so to speak. And then for the heater outlet, it's going to be about here, because we know from looking on the inside that we can't go right there because it will touch the interior wall of that unit, or the upright wall of that unit. So I'm going to put about here, something like that. So I've got an appropriately sized hole saw, and that's a 70mm, and I'll basically go perfectly over that, give a nice tight fit. So I know my hole wants to be about here. Mark, pre-drill, and then drill. And I'll do the same for that one and that one. Very happy with that. So that hose will literally just feed directly up in here. And we will direct that as we see fit. Look how neat that is. Super nice and out the way as well. Excellent. And then the wiring will run up next to it straight through that wooden plate. For this hole, I'm going to mark, pre-drill, and then I'm actually going to drill the hole from the bottom down, because it's quite snatchy, there's metal filings, etc, etc. Be a bit safer, a bit more convenient if I'm putting pressure down, so I've got to go through the wood of the unit, then the wood floor, and then the metalwork of the van. The hole for both hoses are drilled now, super happy with those. The last one I'm going to do before I lay a bit of paint over everything is just to make a hole in that wood there for the wiring, and it's all good. Last thing to do then before we break for lunch is just protect that area. I've just got some rattle can black. Just gonna make sure all those metal edges are sealed, and then to make sure everything's just nice and uniform looking really. Before this unit goes back in the van and we can tidy up all of the heater, there's two more things I need to do, and that is to fit the inlet and outlet for the heat, effectively. We're going to put the inlet inside the van. That's a good idea, so you're reusing or you're reheating the air inside the van rather than heating the outside ambient temperature as well. It means you're not working your heater as hard, and it means you can warm up the inside of your van quicker. I've also just, in the back there, that I've made an access hole for the wiring. So all the wiring that's running along the back of the van can come through here, and the wiring for the heater can come out of there as well. And as I said before, we're going to be reformatting all of the electrics in the vehicle, so it's a good time to make a hole for that sort of access right now. So basically, I'm going to make a hole right down in this bottom corner here. That's going to be the outlet, and right in this bottom corner here for the inlet. And you can see just by how the colour difference is here, this is where my rock and roll bed is. So I'm going to be drawing in the air from underneath the rock and roll bed out the way of everything. And when we're packing underneath the bed, we'll make sure that is always clear. And then the heater outlet is going to be right in this bottom corner, and that'll just fit right really nicely in almost the centre of the van, which means the heat will be able to go up into the pop top nicely and just provide the rest of the area with warmth. And it'll look quite smart down there too. Now we've got the heater mounted permanently, we've got the holes ready for where we are routing our pipes. I want to put the pipes back in and tidy that all up. But before I do that, I've got to put the wiring in. There are 3 wiring harnesses here. One is for the control panel. That's called the transition harness. As we spoke about, it comes with a 1.8, but you can get extensions. So that's that one. The next one is the diesel pump harness. The end of that you have to make up, and they do that so you can feed a thin end through any holes in the bodywork. Super long, but you can shorten it. Doesn't need to be this long, but it is. And the last is the power supply harness. Again, super long, that is actually 6.5 meters. We only need about a meter of that. But it does come very nicely terminated. It comes with fuses, and it comes with the plug that goes in the end of the heater itself. Now, I thought ahead, didn't I, from earlier, and there's actually a cable ready for the diesel heater. So what I'm going to do is still feed the rest through and then cut off what I don't need later on. But I have the beauty of being able to feed most of the cables up through the big hole where the heater hose is going, and then feeding just the plugs through the little hole next to it, and then I'll plug them into the looms that have been fed through the stainless steel box. I got a little bit excited before. I put the fuel pump harness right up inside the vehicle, whereas in fact it doesn't. So I've just pulled that back out. And what I'm going to do then is I'm either going to route it nicely around the heater this way or run it nicely just around the back of the heater to the fuel pump that I'm going to locate about there. And I think that's probably what we'll move on to next, is mounting the fuel pump and actually cutting in to this line. And I'll explain that in just a second. So there's a few remaining bits and pieces to do. We have the fuel pump to find a home for, then we've got to mount it at the right angle. We've got to tap into our fuel line, and the reason we are tapping into our existing fuel line rather than dropping into a tank like you'd see on VW T5 and T6 builds is because our fuel system isn't pressurized. The fuel feed out the tank is gravity fed, so when I put one of these brass T-pieces into our existing fuel line, our diesel pump will be able to suck directly out of the bottom of the tank effectively. So that makes that side a lot easier. We're not removing tanks, we're not removing sending units, anything like that, like in a T5, T6. So, fuel pump, teeing into the fuel line, building up the pump, and then routing what's going to be very little amounts of fuel line. Once we're happy with the location of the fuel line, then we can be happy with the wiring. Once we're happy with the wiring and that's all tidied up and out of the way, we can then fit the combustion inlet pipe and the combustion exhaust pipe with silencer and all the clamp kit. So yeah, there's bits and pieces going on, but I think let's start methodically. Let's go straight ahead with the pump. I will build that up in front of you first. And just a point to note, if you're ever worried, the direction of the flow of the pump, you want your fuel tank here and your diesel heater here effectively, the arrow means the fuel is pumping that way. Now, as Urban Arc Overland said, the first thing you're going to do with your diesel pump is actually cover up that arrow with the anti-vibration mount, if I can get it on. Fingers aren't working right now. But if you can just remind yourself that the pump is pointing towards the plug socket, pump to socket, then you'll know which way you want the fuel to flow. Super, there we go. Right, so that's on there, very nice and easy to slip on. We can orientate that in any which way we want in terms of that band. But when you are mounting the pump to the body, you want to ensure that the pump is at a 30-degree angle pointing upwards. I can tell you from experience, if you were to lay it flat, it doesn't work very well because you get air in it. And basically, this is a sucking pump and it wants to suck from down below to go up high. So that's what you want to do. You want to push upwards. So 30-degree angle, we'll mount that on the side of the van, find a good home for it, and then we shall put all the pipes together. Before that though, let's build up this pump using the supplied bits of hose and the clamps. Now the diesel pump is fitted and we're happy with its location, we can now route the combustion air inlet pipe and the exhaust outlet. When it comes to this, obviously it has the silencer on now, which does make the heater a lot quieter, so super happy with that. It does come with a Jubilee clamp. If you are fitting it in the likes of T5, you would probably want to build the exhaust, the outlet and the fuel lines onto the heater before, but because of that very convenient location we've got it in, we can set it up in position and then route all these pipes, reduce them in length if we need to. That's how we're going to do it. So the pipe's very simple. We have a clamp that comes with the kit that will hold the end in position, a Jubilee that clamps onto the heater, like I said, and that wants to be pointing to the rear of the vehicle. All right, that needs to be pointing to the rear of the vehicle, and if possible, in a downward position. So if your heater is where my right hand is here, you want the heater combustion inlet tube pointing downwards, because if any moisture does build up inside this pipe, then it can just drip out the end. Failing that, if you do find yourself with any low points, you can just drill a small hole at the lowest most point so any water can drip out of there. So that's the heater combustion inlet. When it comes to the exhaust, you have this wonderful fiberglass heat shield. Fantastic piece of kit. You don't get that on all heaters. So thank you Autoterm for putting it on these heaters here. With where our heater is located and where we want the exhaust to exit, we're probably going to be chopping a huge amount of this out. So what we'll be able to do is make the cut, put the silencer in between the heater and the tip of the exhaust, and using all the provided clips and brackets available, we should come up with a neat solution. Point to note, when you are fitting the heater on when you are fitting the exhaust on the heater, you may find you want to cut a slit in that exhaust just to make it easier to put it round the inlet or outlet of the exhaust. And you can just cut this with a grinder or a hacksaw, making sure you tidy up all the edges because it can get quite sharp. Again, with the exhaust, you want it pointing to the rear of the vehicle. There are different ways of mounting it. I prefer to have them pointing out the side of the van. There are arguments for and against having them underneath the van, exiting underneath the van as well. Generally, when I fit a heater, I do like to have the tip of the exhaust just pointing out the outside of the vehicle and away from any openings that you might have, so window openings, etc, etc. And I always fit it on the non-sliding door side. If you've got a twin slider, there are different options for you as well. All right, so for this particular application, we will be mounting the silencer probably first, and then cutting the exhaust to length to make sure we've got a nice, neat system, and we will be covering as much as we can with a fiberglass shroud. Let's get on with it. So a lot of work just happened there. We were able to fit the diesel pump. We found a very convenient hole in the chassis, which we could just bolt straight through with a supplied bracket and bolt. We then chopped into the factory fuel line, or the main diesel fuel line to the engine. And I chopped into that and put in an 8mm brass T-piece. The fuel line that goes from the T-piece to the diesel line, I had to replace with something I had in stock because I needed to have a diameter. So I went with a 6.7 or something like that, that was able to fit both the thinner or smaller diameter diesel heater line and the 8mm T-piece. So I was able to squeeze onto one and clamp onto the other, so that's super cool. It's a very short run to the pump. The pump's at a 30-degree angle. It's in the right orientation, pointing uphill. I've then clamped it to a bolt here so it doesn't move. Everything's really nice and secure, and then it does a nice loop over the exhaust, out the way of the exhaust, and feeds right into the pump. The fresh air, or the combustible air intake, I have tucked away nicely opposite the direction of travel. It's got plenty of air to breathe around there, and it will keep nice and dry. So again, super happy with that. And finally, not finally, but one of the last things we did was the exhaust. Now, I'm still in two minds whether this will work. Obviously, it's a very tight space for this to combine, to fit in. I wanted to fit the silencer in, and I wanted to keep the tailpipe conveniently in front of the jacking point and the rear trailing arm support there. So I did a very complex type of arrangement here. It's a tight bend after the heater. Now that's my only concern there, is that it might get too hot. However, it's got the heat shield in there and it's a continuous curve. It's not like a right angle or anything like that. And I think the shield makes it look worse than it is. It then snakes around into the exhaust and then out the tailpipe. I only chopped out about 6 inches of the supplied exhaust, but that has all been fitted with the supplied brackets. And what I did was drill into the chassis rail or the sill there, put in a 6mm riv nut, and that is now secure. The last thing we did under here was to connect the diesel pump. As you saw, I don't know where it is now, but as you saw, the 12-volt supply to the diesel pump is about 6 meters long or something daft. So I chopped out about 5.5 meters of that. And so from plug to plug, I don't know, what's that? Maybe 50 centimeters, something like that. Chopped it, spliced it, soldered it, and then covered it all in heat shrink, cable tied and secured it out the way. And I believe that is all done for underneath the van. Really happy with how it's turned out. It's a super nice box. The heater's all secured in there. Obviously you've got the fresh air vent, the exhaust and the diesel pump all within this area. I'm going to be fitting mudguards to this van actually, because we do get a bit of spray up there, but everything under here is IP rated. I'm very happy, and like I said before, I did have a diesel heater under there before and it was just fine. So yes, that's where it is. I think what we'll do now, and the last thing we did was just tidy up the cables underneath, and they route through the pipe, through the plate as you saw before. I think what we'll do now is drop it down, connect the live, connect the control panel, feed their hoses where we want them to be, and give her a test fire. What I'm not going to be doing actually is finding the final location for the doing the final location for the control panel, because I'm going to play around with that, see where I actually want it to be. I might actually route the cable up so it's on the entrance to the pop top, so it's at a nice convenient height and it's easily controllable. So again, I'm just going to leave that as a plug-in. Same with the 12 volt, because I'm moving all of the electrics to another cupboard. I'm not actually going to cut and terminate that conveniently placed 12 volt feed that you've already seen in there. I'm literally just going to connect the supplied cables up to the top of the battery terminals just for the purposes of today, get it test fired and get it. And there we have it. We have fitted the diesel heater. And there we have it. We have fitted the diesel heater in our classic camper van. The only thing that's left to do now is to fit the 25 amp fuse for that cable. I did end up shortening out the cable because getting on top of the battery terminals is a bit of a faff. So I just wired it into the cable we had available. Done. I've also connected the controller, which is just here. Like I said to you, I don't know whether I'm going to put it up here or across here or up on the pillar or somewhere like here. I don't know yet. I don't know. So, because what I want the heater to do is to heat the whole space, not the heat just to get to about here and then turn off because the thermostat's there. So yeah, I may well mount it up higher. So we'll just see. So all we need to do for now is, if we keep an eye on this, I shall put the fuse in right here. And there we go. We have fired up. I'll give it a couple of seconds and then we'll turn the heater on, and then that should prime the pump. You should hear that ticking away in a minute. There we go. It says the battery's got 13 volts. The temperature on the readout is the temperature of the vehicle or where the control panel is. So if I press to go, I want heating, temperature mode, and we can go through these settings later. Yes, I'd like it to reach 21 degrees. It's currently 16. Yes, please. It's 5 hours. There we go. It's already started. So the 3 flames on the left there, is it starting? I've just heard the pump or the fan kick in, and it goes through its startup sequence, and that will include the pump kicking in to start priming it. Now I'm hoping it won't take too many times to pump and prime, because the run from the actual fuel line to the pump itself is actually fairly short. So, but what I can do, I can keep an eye on that, and when the pump kicks in, if you listen very quietly, you might even be able to listen very carefully, sorry. You might even be able to hear it. But right now, the fan is running and it's going through its startup sequence. Why don't we get underneath and see if we can hear the pump, and then let's see if it's starting to draw through fuel. So we've done the first startup. We've seen that the fuel is being drawn from the fuel line. And what I did to actually help that, I actually started the engine of the van to actually get the fuel flowing through the main fuel line. That would then feed into that T-piece and the pump will be able to pick it up a lot easier. We've actually seen just the first dribble of fuel go into the diesel pump, but what it did is come up with a fault 13. The fault 13 on these heaters is lack of fuel. So what we did, we've let the thing turn itself off. It's got its own cooling down or switching off process. You let it do that. You go back into the heater, ask it to turn on again. It will go through that startup process again. And bearing in mind we've just seen the fuel hit the diesel heater, we might even be able to catch the first fire of it. So it's all going to plan so far. There we go, she's starting to fire up. That's the noise you will hear, that is the noise you're expected to hear. And then you can hear the pump ticking away nicely, full of fuel. If we go inside, you should start feeling some heat. After only the second fire, and it's really kicking in now, you can hear it. That is now giving out a really nice stream of hot air. And that's all we're after. You know, with the dial down here, what you can do is actually turn the direction of the dial so you can direct your hot air if you want to. The beauty of this is it's directly beneath the opening to the pop top, so straight away it's going to go straight up into the pop top, and that's exactly what we want because obviously my kiddies are up there and it's working as it should do. I'm super happy with it. There is a noise, there always will be a noise unless your diesel heater is located at the other end of the van and you've got a long wheelbase van. There will always be a noise, you know, you've got to have some sort of compromise. Things I do want to check on moving forward. I'm going to keep an eye on that exhaust system in case it's got too many tight bends in it, but I think it will be just fine. And as a point to note, if you are plumbing directly into your fuel line on an older camper van, then be aware of the fuel left in your tank, because on a modern van you use a standpipe to drop into the tank, and you make sure the standpipe is not touching the bottom of the tank, otherwise you'll run the tank out of fuel and not be able to start your vehicle. So yes, you've just got to be aware of that, in all honesty. But apart from that, it's a very simple process. If you don't have a diesel vehicle that you can just plumb into the pipework, you can get the small diesel tanks, and I will leave a link down to those below. If we are able, we'll put a picture of one just here as well, and they're available from the Autoterm website as well. We've got one more camp this year, Campers and Coffee, and it's in December, so it's the Christmas version. So this will be a very nice thing to have in the camper van. And thank you for watching, I guess. Super happy with the install. I know my wife's going to be a very happy person knowing that we've got a diesel heater back in the van again, and it just opens you up for more adventures throughout the year, really. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you on the next one.